All right, let's bring to order this week's meeting of the Middleton Select Board for Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded audio and visually. First item for business will be the reading of the warrant number 2516 and Facilities Project Warrant 54, if you would, Justin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have before you this evening warrant number 2516 dated February 6, 2025 on the payroll side of things totaling in at $896,595. A few items of note, the Public Health Excellent Grant, that's what PHE grant is up at the top there, $6,600. You'll also see overtime that we continue to track for police and fire that's helping to inform our budget approach this year for fiscal year 26. And then also the snow is starting to stack up a little bit, so a little over $11,000 there. On the bills payable side of things, just shy of $4 million. Some big numbers to call out there. Obviously, the Masco assessment down at the bottom, as well as debt service, are two very large lines coming out of the treasurer's office, which in and of itself is making up about $3 million of that, and then a series of some smaller items, closeout items on the Peabody Street Bridge, some snow plow-related snow equipment issues, also popping up under DPW. And then rounding things out, Facilities Project Warrant FP 54 coming in, let me see here. Well, it says 245,651, but that's a typo. Really, it's closer to that $2.5 million number for construction services.
2425651.
Yep. 2424067. That's a bulk of it, and you've seen that work going on down at the construction site. So we'll go ahead and, 2425651, the far left figure. And we have a brief update on the municipal project at number 3 on the agenda.
Question, where, do we have any tallies yet of where we are in snow and ice? Because I see we have some salt under bills payable, and then obviously the line item under payroll. I'm just wondering how we're doing on that.
So we're in good shape. It's been a fairly mild winter so far, but that said, I had a conversation via text with DPW Director Goodwin today asking about this anticipated weather event on Thursday, so I think that'll give us a better picture. Once we draw that down, I'll communicate something to the board via email.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else from anyone?
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, I move that we approve warrant number 2516 and Facilities Project warrant number FP 54.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Now we have before us minutes from open session January 13 and January 21st, as well as executive sessions December 3rd, January 13th, and January 21st. Are there any questions or discussion on those?
Mr. Chair, in what you were sent today, you had previously approved December 3rd, so it's December 17th that are for review for executive session from December.
December 17th.
Otherwise, everything else
Oh,
is the
okay,
same.
that would have been the
Yeah.
the Thursday. Very good.
That was just a transmission error on my end.
All right.
So move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, passed unanimously. Justin, Town Administrator updates and reports, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few items around town. Just to communicate to the public, we've received news that the Maple Street Bridge project has been pushed back once again. They're anticipating a summer 2027 construction date, so we'll continue to monitor that. Obviously, that's a state-funded initiative, so we're keeping a close eye on it. The Charter Review Committee has been meeting with an anticipated hearing on their findings sometime in the next month. We're hearing either late February or early March, depending on availability of a room to meet in. And thank you to that group, by the way, for doing that work. It's quite a tedious process. The deadline to file an action plan relative to the EOHLC emergency regulations is upcoming on February 13th. That will be discussed later in this meeting, closer to the 7 o'clock hour, because it's a joint meeting with the planning board. We've kicked off the capital budget process, officially meeting with department heads this week and into next week, with the bulk of those meetings to occur over the next 2 weeks, just trying to narrow down what the number is looking like for this year's capital plan. We do have a slightly higher than typical free cash balance because of the way we've been investing funds from the municipal project, but obviously those monies are being drawn down, and so I wouldn't anticipate that to be a regular occurrence. I have submitted the contract to the state. There was the January 30th deadline that we had talked about at a recent select board meeting for the $2 million MassWorks grant, and we're waiting on a response from them. It's something we're monitoring closely. It seems to be in some type of gray area due to the compliance deadline being pushed back, where originally it was supposed to be closer up at the end of the year, now pushed back to July. No clear direction was provided from the state on whether or not it would impact that deadline, so we just applied for the funds anyway. We'll see what happens there. The building committee met on January 22nd to follow up on items approved by the select board at your January 21st meeting. They're also reviewing interior finishes with the design team, and we're pretty close to a final determination on that. We are rolling out a new phone system at town offices. We don't anticipate any disruption to services. Jackie's been doing a bulk of the work on that. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to it, or.
The COA's already been changed over to the new system successfully, and other buildings will start rolling in the next 2 weeks. And everyone's excited because they'll come with us to the new buildings.
Thank you for your work on that. The Villbridge project at the former Angelica site is coming before the ZBA to officially request to remove the drive-through infrastructure on their site plan. As you may recall, the ZBA ultimately didn't approve a drive-through at that location, but the developer wanted to keep the infrastructure there anyway, should something change down the road. Since then, they have secured a 180-seat dining venue. They haven't announced who it is yet. But to accommodate that extra space, they are officially removing the drive-through infrastructure, so that's not something that would even be on the table in the future. And I have met with the town administrators from Boxford and Topsfield to discuss the elementary school budgets and the Masco budget. We're trying to see how it looks in each community and what our approach is going to be. So those are two very large budget drivers for us, more so this year than even what we see typically. But we anticipate them to take a clearer shape sometime over the next few weeks as they make their way through their respective committees. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. And that's everything for now.
All right, thank you. Any questions at all for that, or? For anyone? No? Okay. Move on to item number 2, which is a public comment section of every meeting. And is anyone present that wishes to make public comment? Now's your time. Okay. I would like to make a quick public comment, and that's the board's interested in changing start time of the meetings here from 6 p.m. to 5 p.m. And just wanted to put that out there ahead of time, and welcome any input or questions that may come from the public. Number 3 is going to be Middleton Municipal Campus update. That's going to be you, Mr. Sulzberg.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just in brief, people driving by can see that a lot of significant progress has been made there. There were a couple items that were communicated to ATA Bresnahan and I today. We have our weekly meetings at 1 down on site every week just to keep our finger on the pulse. And some big things upcoming. They're getting into the septic work at Town Hall. That system is going to lie to the front of that building, so they're going to be working on that. On the public safety building, they're going to be working on drainage that runs throughout the site around and adjacent to the building, so they'll be doing some trench work. And then between both buildings, they are working on roof blocking and sheathing, roughing in electrical, plumbing, and HVAC, and interior stair installation. So right now, there are some temporary stairs to access the second floor that the trades have been using, but given the ice and everything else, they're moving them from the inside, and those will ultimately be the permanent stairs, which is a pretty good milestone for the project. So they're moving along smoothly. We also had a productive meeting last week with Finance Director Wood, as well as Brian LaRoche, the OPM from PCA 360, just trying to narrow down, given where we are in the project, where we are financially. And we've communicated to date that we're under budget, but we've been hesitant to hang an official number on it. With confidence at this point in time, we can confirm that of the roughly 10 million that was approved for additional funding, we're going to be able to turn back about 3.5 million of that so far, with confidence. So we're going to keep working on that number, try to drive it down further, but it's pretty good progress. And that's it for now.
That's it? Recap of, item number 4 will be a recap of this past Saturday's budget summit. So every year at this time is when we sit down with the Finance Committee and the board and the town's administration, and all the town department heads, and including the schools, come in and give us what their budget outlook is like for their operational side. So it's a long day, but it's a productive day, and it gets us in a position as we move forward to be able to present a responsible, well-thought-out budget come the May 13th town meeting for the residents to vote on. I don't know if anyone else wanted to have any other input on that, or? I know.
Well, it's just that, in planning the FY '26 budget, we also look at what's coming down the pike in FY '27 and FY '28, so that we can not only make the best decisions for the next year, but for the future beyond that. And, one thing, that we really need to be thinking about is that our share of the Masco assessment increase is likely to jump significantly in FY '27. For FY '26, as their budget stands now, where Middleton is funding 22% of the increase. For FY '27, it's more likely to be closer to 40% of the increase, whatever that increase is. So as we're planning on how FY '26 looks, we have to keep that significant cost increase in mind.
And I would just add, in a broader sense, what we're looking at right now is a pretty significant deficit, well north of about $500,000. And I think going into the process this year versus last year is a little bit different, being that going into the fiscal '25 process last year, there was more of a question mark over whether or not an override was needed or what it would look like. And coming out of that process, there was unanimous across the board agreement that town services relative to public safety are understaffed compared to peer communities. That's what went forth as a proposal to annual town meeting. It was widely supported at the annual town meeting, but unfortunately it failed at the ballot because there's a two-part component there for an override. What is different, I would say, going into this year in fiscal '26 is going into it with the assumption and just data-supported fact that things did not get better on their own over the past year, and the need, if anything, has only increased. And I think that has helped the boards and committees going into the budget process this year, I think, get right to it in terms of those conversations and what those elements might look like. So we'll continue to have those pieces take shape over the coming weeks, and there'll be a additional Saturday budget summit on March 1st. It will be recorded and it is open to the public. A bulk of that day will be consumed by one-time capital requests and going through the capital plan, but there will be a follow-up to the fiscal '26 operating budget as well.
And I should mention the last Saturday's meeting was also recorded for viewing at a later date. You can locate that on the town's website. All right, anything else on that? Move to item number 5, which is going to be to open the warrant for the May 13th, 2025 annual town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we open the May 13th, 2025 annual Middleton Town Meeting warrant.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. So the warrant is open for the annual town meeting. Next, we have some licensing items. And I guess I can go in order, or do you have an order you want me to?
No, we can go in order.
Okay. it's going to be review and vote on annual licenses for liquor, common victualler. The first one's going to be liquor license manager change. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I apologize.
Yeah.
Item 1 is not the other. 2 and 3 are not annual renewals. Item 1, we have a separate person for,
I'm sorry.
who's a renewal. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's right, okay. So for number 2, it's going to be liquor license manager change. SD,
I'm sorry, we have to vote on something for number 1, for an annual.
oh,
Who's
I'm
not
sorry.
listed out. We don't.
It's not listed, who was that?
It's going to be the Black Glove livery, because it's an annual renewal. The other 2 are called out because they're change of status, but the first one is Black Glove
Black
livery,
Glove
who's just a
Transportation.
renewal. Yes,
Manager.
and he is here this
He
evening.
is here. And that is,
We'll start calling them out from now on, because we really should be out of renewal season at this point in the
Okay.
year.
and that's Timothy? Hi, you want to just let us know who you are and what your service is, what you provide for a service?
Hi, my name is Timothy Axford. I have a delivery service for transportation, like a limousine service, private rides, stuff like that.
So this was a renewal that expired at the end of December?
Yeah,
What happened?
I thought it was at the end of the year. It actually was earlier in the year. It was actually November, so
Well, November was the application deadline, but the license, the renewal ended on December 31st. So you've actually.
so I came in late after that point to renew it. I thought I still
When
had
did you come
time.
in for renewal? When did you come in for renewal?
I don't know, a week ago, maybe, week and a half ago.
Yeah, since your last meeting, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, so Tim, while it says that it's the 31st, the permit, there's a lot of work that goes ahead of time, which is why we notify you in advance in October that the deadline for the application renewal is in November. So that, you have to pay attention to that, because by the time you come to us at the end of December, or now it's actually, once it's expired,
it's expired,
it's why we have you here tonight, to make sure that, and we do that with everybody that this occurs with. I mean, sometimes the gears move slowly, these things have to be sent into Boston for various, approvals and rubber stamping, and it just doesn't happen,
Overnight.
That doesn't happen overnight at all, as you know,
Yeah.
so.
I have my file kept up to date, and my registration is on file for my car registration and everything. I usually do that in May when it comes up. I just have it on file automatically. So I have paperwork already.
Just remember, to file for 26 by the end of November of 25.
That's called, we have you here now, because it'd probably be a
Yeah.
little bit
It
more
was the first
pressure on your
time, so
memory than,
it's-
the last thing you're thinking about is, December 31st, we get it, but that's why we have to let you know that there's a few more gears that have to move, so,
All right,
okay?
all right.
All right, so,
Thank you.
I'll take a motion.
I'll move to renew the annual livery license for Black Glove Transportation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. All right, Tim, is it just, remember that, okay? And now you have to go in and, what else does he have left to do? Anything at all?
License available for you to pick up tomorrow, but we can also email it if you prefer.
Yeah, I can pick it up by the time. So.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow then,
All right.
after 9.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see here. Okay, now I guess I'll go for the management change?
Please.
Yeah. So liquor license management change, SD Management Group, doing business as Ferncroft Country Club, Phil Lice. And we can have, go right up and recognize the name. How you doing? Good.
So, good evening, Jill Mann here on behalf of SD Management Group LLC. Here with me is Phil Lease, who is the applicant for the new manager of SD. We didn't formally submit in time to do all of the, what do I have to advertise for manager?
Not for manager, but we'll talk about deadlines for when you need to submit to the select board. Yes. After the meeting, Jill.
Yeah, I know when we do.
Thank you.
I do. So,
Okay.
there's been a lot of upheaval at the club and between me, the manager, and Phil, we fell into a gap and didn't apply in time. You know, we were supposed to do it more timely than we have. We should have done it about 4 months ago, and we didn't. So for that, I apologize, but I did end up delivering to Jackie, Ms. Bresnahan, excuse me, a copy of the full application that included all of the information relative to Phil being the new manager, you know, the query, basically, and then all of the application requirements. And Phil's been working there since this new group
Since they
took
bought,
over.
yeah, nice, 20 years.
Yeah, so he's more than qualified, and then we'll be back again next month, I think, because can you vote on this, Jackie, now? I don't.
This is the change of manager for the full license and for the seasonals.
Yeah,
But we'll do the renewal for the seasonals once Mr. Lice applies for
Okay.
them. We just got the renewals from ABCC this week.
Okay, that's what I figured. So I'm assuming we have to come back, but if you have questions for Mr. Lease, by all means, or for me.
Did the last manager leave?
When did, he left and didn't fully leave, you know how that goes. When did he leave? A while ago.
Yeah, I think about, was it November?
More than 30 days.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely didn't do it in time.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
It is very unusual for me to do that. You know that. As soon as I hear that the manager's gone, I typically step in and we'll do it and we'll process. Just a lot of balls dropped in this particular arena, and I apologize for that.
Thank you.
And you said that you've been working there for 20-plus years?
20, so it's my 20th season at the club, yeah.
So the new manager took over. Remember 2006, that group that owned both properties sold off the hotel and then sold off the hotel to Sage and then sold the golf course to this new group?
Yeah.
So that's when Phil came in.
Okay,
That long ago.
It's 2006.
very good.
Yeah.
I don't have any further
No other
questions.
questions? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the change of manager for SD Management Group doing business as Ferncroft Country Club to the manager of Philip Alexander Lease?
Yeah.
Lease.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passed unanimously. Okay?
Thank you.
You're right, Bill.
Thank you.
I have something for you.
You're all set. I just have to get something.
Okay.
from Jackie. I'll talk to you. You're all set. Okay.
All right. Next, we have a one-day liquor license request for February 13th in the lobby of 177 North Main Street in Middleton, Mass. I did see the packet, and who do we have to represent that? Hi.
Party accommodator, how are you?
Good. Go ahead, you can just let us know what you got planned for that occasion, and
Yeah.
we have got your packet. We did read, your application and your tips and credentials, but go ahead, what do you have? What do you have
Sure,
going
it's
on?
just, it's a Board of Trade meeting for the, part of the Board of Trade, and Megan's putting together an event for all the businesses in the area, anybody that belongs to Board of Trade, and a couple of new people. It's kind of an open house, and they want to do a little open bar, just beer and wine, and she's having food and introducing some people from town.
Right, I think they told us, but is that in Salem? What lobby is
No,
physically?
actually, so it's in Middleton, so it's Unit 201
It's at Salem
at
Meadow.
Main Street.
It's at the Salem Meadow.
At
That
the
is
Salem Metal
okay,
Building,
That's how it
yeah.
was like. Okay. And the hours?
I think it's like a 3-hour, 4-hour, so it's probably like, we haven't firmed them up, but I think it's like, if it's
App says
5:30
5
to
to
8,
8?
I doubt it, yeah, something like that.
So, to be clear, whatever's on your application
Yeah.
is what goes on the license.
Yeah,
So if
and
the
I put it
event-
on there, I just don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, it's 5 to 8. So
Yeah,
if the
that's what
event
she
goes
wants.
longer, though, your service ends at 8 for the alcohol.
Is that
Not a
good?
problem.
Is that good? Because this would be the time to amend that, okay?
Not a problem, they all want to end it, it's
Okay.
weeknights.
All right. All right. Don't have any other questions?
I do not.
That should be a good event.
But everybody attends that wants to.
All right, I'll take a motion on the one-day liquor license.
I'll make a motion that we approve the one-day liquor license.
We have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Good job. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Now we have select board appointments. First one on deck is an MBTA Advisory Board designee, Kyle Smith. And I know we see Kyle here tonight. Now, if we can get a little more description on what that actually is. I know that's a...
Yep, so the MBTA Advisory Board was something that the Select Board advertised, I want to say late summer, early fall, due to a vacancy of the departure of our previous town planner. The MBTA Advisory Board itself mostly deals with helping make an argument for the allocation of federal funds for the MBTA. And so when this originally came up, I think it caught some folks' attention because it was around the same time as the MBTA communities discussion. There really is no input by somebody sitting on this panel in that conversation. But there's still value to having some voice for Middleton in the room as part of that conversation, even though we don't have any traditional MBTA service within our borders.
Yeah,
Right.
it's truly I used to sit on the MBTA Advisory Board when I lived in a different town. It's an advisory-only committee. The MBTA Board and now the Mass Department of Transportation Board would take recommendations from this board, but also take recommendations from the MBTA that would ultimately be voted on. So most of the items that will come up there will be mostly around major transportation, rapid trans, commuter rail, and bus. Very little, but every once in a while, they'll talk about items that will affect communities like Middleton that are in the MBTA zoning.
So I have a question for you, Kyle. So we're going to talk later in this meeting about trying to have Middleton no longer be an MBTA community, and which you may not have been aware of when you applied for this. So knowing that we may advocate for that, would you still want this position, knowing that the town may not even want to continue to be in the zone?
You know, I think it's worthwhile to have someone in that position, because one of the things that also happens, as Brian mentioned, but also sometimes if there are things that affect the town while we are still an MBTA community, I'm assuming you would want to know about that. And so
As a
that's part of
liaison.
what this position also does, is bring information back to the select board. So until you exit, I think it makes sense to have someone in that position, making sure that you are represented there, even if it is advisory and really dealing with, review and comments on budgets and some of like the fare increases or things like that, which don't really affect Middleton directly. So, if the town and the select board opt to withdraw from that, that's fine. But, I think from looking at some of the attendance from other meetings, like a lot of the towns around don't attend, and, I think that's a missed opportunity while they are considered communities.
Yep. Very good. Well, then I will
Mr.
take-
Chairman, I would make a motion to appoint as a Middleton representative to the MBTA Advisory Board Kyle Smith for a term through June 30th.
Forever.
Yeah, okay,
Is it,
forever. It's a lifetime appointment, I guess.
yeah, there's no end date.
Yeah, there
even
is
on
no,
the certificate.
Till ... as Jeff has mentioned.
Until such time.
All right.
I'll
Mr.
second.
Yep, sorry.
Sorry not to interrupt the vote, but Mr. Chair, I was going to recommend taking executive session out of order upon the completion of this appointment, just given we're so far ahead in the agenda.
Okay. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Did I have a second?
Yes,
Okay.
me.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Passed unanimously. Thank you, Kyle. All right, so now, with respect to time, we're going to take,
We have other appointments.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
We still have ZBA.
Do you want to have planning board in the room for that conversation, where it's two
Candidates.
two alternates and two
Oh,
candidates?
they're not-
yes.
Is there value to that?
Not
And
here.
they don't start until 7.
Oh, they're not here.
Yes.
Well, yeah, why don't we,
No.
I think we should move down the agenda and then come back once we get,
Planning board here?
yeah.
I guess what he means, that's what he means. Are the two...
I'm being quiet, that we're on time.
It's unlike us to be ahead of schedule, so.
Pushing forward. Are the two applicants present this evening, Rachel Nemeth And, okay, and Cheryl Lee McCormick, okay. All right. And you're both applying for both a planning board alternate as well as zoning board of appeals, as it's listed? Okay.
Just planning board for me.
I'm sorry?
Just planning board for me.
Just the planning board for you? Okay. All right. So, then that's gonna, we're gonna
If you
slow.
want to take the ZBA one, that doesn't involve the planning board, we could do
At your discretion.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. All right, then, but we can, waiting for the planning board.
for
so
the
we-
planning board one. Right.
Waiting for them, we can have the joint, we're gonna have a joint meeting with the planning board.
For the planning board appointment, but we can do the ZBA.
That's what I was saying,
appointment
yeah,
now.
that's what I was saying. So, while we wait for them, we'll do the zoning board of appeals alternate. So if I would ask, well, in this case, Cheryl, why don't you come up and let us know your interest, your background, because now you're the only applicant for that position.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Cheryl McCormick, 9 Cassiotis Lane in Middleton. I was on the planning board several years ago, and I had to leave for my full-time job, but currently I am employed by the town of Winthrop as an assistant town manager. I have 16 years of municipal experience. I oversee the planning board in the ZBA in Winthrop. I'm a licensed attorney, licensed real estate broker, bilingual in Spanish. It's a little bit about my background.
So, Cheryl, a couple of questions for you. I know you had served on the planning board. You're interested in both? I know we're not talking about the planning board position now because the planning board's not here, and that'll be a joint meeting. Because, as you probably know, we're one of only a handful of towns in the state that actually has alternate members of the planning board. But is there were you interested in one over the other, or?
I would be willing to be an alternate for either or. It's fine.
Okay, I didn't know if you had a preference. And the reason why I was asking is because if so, we should probably defer decision on zoning board of appeals and have a decision on the planning board. And
I had
then-
originally applied, put the application in for the planning board. I guess the question would be what night that the ZBA meets monthly, because I do have a commitment in Winthrop. I have to attend,
The last Thursday of every month.
so that would be an issue, because that's when my meetings are.
So you
So
can't
I
say
could
no
do-
to Winthrop?
No.
We don't pay as much, sorry.
So I would be available for Monday, which I believe the planning board has
No,
here.
Wednesday is planning board.
Wednesday,
Second Wednesday of the month.
yes. I think,
You said you were busy. Winthrop was Monday, and you said you were available Wednesday?
correct.
Okay. Yeah,
Correct,
you had said
because
that to me on.
we just changed it. We were Wednesday, Thursdays, so now our planning board is Monday and our CBA is Thursday evenings, so I could do a Wednesday.
Because you would ask me what the
Yep.
nights were.
It is the fourth Thursday, the same night yours is?
Currently, but it does change.
Well,
I just don't want to overcommit and disappoint here.
and, you know, the alternate,
And it is the
more often than not, plays a role in this, so, as you know from your
Yes.
full-time job. So I would, so I'd ask the feeling of the board, I'd like to actually take up the planning board discussion first. It sounds like ZBA would be a conflict for you in terms of scheduling.
It does
So-
sound that way, yes.
So we don't have an actual candidate for Board of Appeal alternate.
Unless
because-
anybody want to step up? Now's the time. Seriously.
All right, so,
I could look at the schedule that I just put together for this calendar year and see if it conflicts with your meeting dates, and I can get back to you. That's the best I can do.
Okay. So we are in about 20-some-odd minutes going to have a similar discussion on the planning board, so,
Okay.
okay.
Any more questions for me?
Nope.
I
All right.
don't.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Nope. Oh.
I certainly lack, Linda Richards.
Hey, Linda.
7 Liberty Street. Hi. I certainly lack the qualifications of other people in the room, but I am the chair of the ICDRC committee, and I go to all of those CBA meetings. So I've become increasingly familiar with how they operate. If there isn't anybody else, I can certainly step up in the short term at least and see how it goes.
Opposed to that.
I certainly would.
I didn't know I was going to do that.
That's how it happens.
You very rarely say
get
no
thrown
to
in.
volunteers.
No, that's two thumbs up.
So I'll move to appoint Linda Richards as an alternate to the Zoning Board of Appeal until June 30th, 2025. Give you 2 or 3 meetings, to see what's about, and if then you're interested, we can reappoint you.
Reappoint you.
I'll second that, but I have a question. Would you step down from the IRDC?
I don't think we have a quorum without me.
They make recommendations to the ZBA.
Right.
There's 3 total.
Well, one really hasn't come yet since last May.
Yeah, the ICDRC, I've been doing some outreach to try to ensure that all 3 people show up regularly, and they will be unable to meet.
That's something the charter, I'm hoping that the charter committee is really looking at, because it's very hard to get people. We've talked about it before, and maybe it's outlived its useful life, that committee.
Does the board find that to be a conflict of interest? I don't know what the history is, if you've had people on both of those bodies.
It's hard because one recommends to the other.
Yeah, I mean, only when something comes up that you've been,
We haven't.
some things come up that aren't pertinent to
Oh,
the other committee, so it wouldn't be everything.
What I would say, this is not the agenda for this meeting, actually, but my opinion on that would be that the ICDRC could really easily be a sub-function or one of the functions of the zoning board of appeals. So we make recommendations, but we review the same materials, and very rarely do we make recommendations that would not get picked up at this CBA anyway.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
No, and I'd also be of the mind where you're willing to step up and
Yeah.
volunteer. We'll cross that bridge when it comes
Okay.
to it, if it
I'm
happens,
fine with that.
Okay?
I'm good with it.
So, in the meantime, I do need to chair a meeting next Thursday. But I'd be bringing recommendations to the next CBA meeting the end of the month.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we can also work with Ms. Richards with, help me out, not conflict of interest, ethics.
Ethics, yeah.
We can double, and I'm sure Madam Clerk may even know if there's history there of having somebody on both. We can figure that out.
It may just be a matter of filing a disclosure. It's
Right.
Easy enough. Okay.
Okay. And again, it'll be short-term enough to see what you like, and then, to fill it, and then if you want to stay, we reappoint.
We'll let you know how it goes. and-
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right, that's
Need a vote?
very good.
Thanks
So I have a motion?
I moved it.
Jeff
A second?
seconded.
Seconded
I have a
it.
motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yep, double thumbs up, applause. All right.
Could folks stop in by the end of the week to sign up? No, that's a new appointment certificate. I
Yep.
don't have one.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So are we still ahead of schedule here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could just grab a classroom around the corner rather than making everyone else move.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. All right, so what we're going to do is while we're waiting for a planning board to arrive, it's going to be a joint meeting. We do have something that we would have executive session that we do at the end, but we're going to do it now. So we're going to leave open session. You guys can stay here. We're going to go to the empty classroom and handle what is item 11 on the agenda that you're looking. And then we'll be back in here to resume and have the joint board meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to discuss strategy with respect to non-union personnel. This is the comp and class, and that we will be returning to open session.
Roll call.
Please.
Brian,
Yes.
Costa,
Yes.
Rick,
Yep.
Jeff,
Yeah.
and I am a yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, who is the second?
Sounded like Deb.
Oh. Thank you.
All in favor? All right, so we will be leaving open session to executive session. We will be returning here, so folks, they don't have to go anywhere.
10 or 15 minutes.
right, thanks you all for waiting. We'll bring back into order this evening's meeting. Back in open session. So, we are now on to item number 8. I don't know if you guys want to, planning board, want to open your meeting while you're here, if you want to call to order.
Call to order our joint meeting with the planning board and the select board. We do have a quorum here from the planning board. I'm Anthony DiGregorio, our chair, and I'll let the other members introduce themselves.
I'm Lisa Sheehan.
Demar Vieira.
Jason Bernhardt.
Thank you, guys. All right, so with that being said, on the agenda is, we have 2 applicants to fill the vacant alternate position for the planning board. We did hear from Cheryl and, I don't know if you...
Planning board.
And Rachel is.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Yeah, so, you guys want to take over from here and maybe call each one individually and get things started like that, would be fine.
Sure. Cheryl, would you like to come up first? Good to see you again.
Nice to see you, too.
So you were on the board previously, I believe as an alternate, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it was, yeah.
And what are your motivations for coming back?
Currently, I explained to the select board earlier, currently I work for the town of Winthrop as an assistant town manager, and I oversee the planning board and the CBA, so I have interest in it. I recently got my construction supervisor license last year.
Congratulations.
So it's very helpful having that license, and thought it would be interesting to come back and help out.
Very good. Any planned or potential future projects in the town of Middleton that may pose a conflict of interest?
No.
Good. Any other members have any questions or? Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
So actually, I have a couple of questions, if I could. If a full position on the planning board opened up, one of the members decided not to run for re-election, would you consider running?
Yes.
You would? And then, kind of be helpful, we on these boards actually have gotten your actual background, but could you talk a little bit about your experience, both in the current role that you have in Winthrop, your background, your education, and others? I mean, you mentioned that you've recently got your construction supervisor's license, but I believe as the assistant town administrator or town manager, you actually oversee the planning board and others. If you could just give us a little bit of a synopsis of your experience.
Sure. So I worked for 16 years for the city of Revere. Majority of that time I worked as an assistant city solicitor, and I was promoted to general counsel, and I oversaw the building and health department. I ran the city's 40U program for problem properties. Did that for about 5 years for the city. And I obtained a job with the town of Winthrop in November of last year in the position I'm in now. And I was assigned to the planning board and board of appeals to oversee that. So I'm new with that, restructuring the whole program and whatnot. So I've been involved in that. I got my construction supervisor license because I found it very helpful when I worked in the building department to be able to understand code, and when we were doing code enforcement, where to find code without relying on the inspectors. So I obtained that license, which was very helpful. I've also had a plan reading course, project management course. I am a licensed attorney. I've been practicing 13 years. I had a private practice doing family law. So I still do that. I'm a licensed parenting coordinator, so I wear many, many hats. But my passion has always been in construction. So I'm trying to incorporate construction with my legal career, and so it works out well.
I don't know the answer to this, but is there an attorney on the planning board presently? A practicing attorney or a licensed attorney?
I don't believe so.
I think there is on the ZBA.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, there is on the ZBA. Craig.
ZBA, yes, not in the planning board.
Not on planning.
Anyone else, questions?
I do not. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Rachel, would you like to come up?
Rachel Nemeth, 29 North Main Street, and I love my community. I don't have any connections to the construction industry or real estate or anything related to that. I just have been in Middleton for 30 years or so, love this community, and would like to, volunteer some time and do some good. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Same question that I had asked Cheryl. Do you have anything, whether it's building-related or investment-related, that would pose a conflict of interest in being on the board?
I have nothing.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Can you give me a little background, similar to Mr. Cresta's question, a little background on your qualifications and skills that kind of relate to planning board?
Sure. I'm extremely detail-oriented, but also a big picture person. So my current job is in editing, so I'm really used to analyzing small, detailed material and distinguishing between things that may look similar on the surface, but that are actually very different. So I have good discriminatory skills, but I also have to have an overall overview picture, like kind of a bird's eye perspective of things. I don't really know what relation my current work directly has to this position. I'm just interested in serving my town, being part of the community. Happy to try to answer any questions that you have, but editing, aside from the fact that skills in English are detail-oriented and that kind of thing, I don't know that it's very connected.
Thank you. In following up the same question that Mr. Cresta had asked of Cheryl, if a permanent position opens up on the board, is that something that you would entertain running for as an elected?
Sure.
rep
Yeah,
versus
so
appointed?
I'd like to try it out first and see if I work well with everyone and am well suited to the position. But if that turned out to be the case, absolutely, I would consider actually running for a position.
Very good. We do only have one alternate position available. However, I had mentioned it before in a prior meeting that Lisa, come June, her term will expire. David, our current alternate, has expressed some interest in pulling papers, so we may have a second alternate position open up in June.
Okay.
If David does not, we would have an open elected position as well. So we will have an opportunity for whoever isn't selected tonight.
Anything else?
Anyone else?
I do not.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no more further discussion, I think I'll,
So I will nominate Cheryl and Rachel for the position of planning board alternate with the term to June 30th, 25.
I'll second that.
I believe we only have one
But
alternate.
just put them both in
one.
the running.
And then we'll
Okay.
take a roll.
Gotcha.
And then we'll vote.
It's kind of the way we do it.
all right.
Can I'd just like to say something before we vote. We have two great candidates here,
Yeah.
and I just want to make sure I get the names. The only thing that I want to say is that we ask people all the time to come and volunteer for positions, and Rachel has never been on a town board before, and Cheryl has. And it's a very tough decision on who to pick, and I've said this at other appointments, that we have to welcome new people to apply and not discourage them, so I just want that to be considered.
All right, well then, if there's nothing else, then I'll call for a vote, and if I could, start, Jason?
Cheryl.
Cheryl?
Cheryl.
Cheryl.
Cheryl?
Cheryl as well.
Cheryl? Yeah.
Cheryl as well. And thank you for your interest, Rachel.
Jeff?
I'll vote for Rachel for the reason that I said, that we need to encourage people to step up and volunteer and not turn them away.
I vote for Rachel as well for the same reason. She gets involved, she speaks, and it's a good way to, immerse yourself and get more involved, right? Costa?
Cheryl, the background seems to be more aligned.
And Brian?
And same for me, Cheryl.
Okay. So, that makes it
6-2.
Advantage to Cheryl Liam McCormick. So thank you very much. Rachel, please keep in mind of what he mentioned, that there sounds like there will be an opening, and that's where we want, that's where we want you to be. Okay? So thank you. Thank you, everyone, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Let's see here. All right, on to item number 9. It seems it has drawn a little town response, and make sure that we're clear with what this is actually about. I'm as tired as about anybody else is with this topic, but, these are the stages that are, still in front of us, and we've got to look at them and let everybody know what we're doing. The idea of informing the state of, just how much of an outlier this town is in regards to what, how they qualify us as an MBTA community. Certainly had my interest, but that's all I'll say with that, and if I want to turn it over to Justin Sulzback.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to provide an update to the community and also as well with the planning board. Mr. Chair, if you'd like to jump in at any point as well. Provide an overview, I guess, relative to the most recent special town meeting on December 12th, what has occurred between that point and now, and to talk a little bit about, I guess, the town's direction and approach moving forward based on some predetermined guidelines from the state. Can everybody hear me okay? I know it's kind of dead in the back sometimes. Sure. I always say doing this because it sounds like I'm yelling. So the question of 3A zoning or MBTA zoning came up again for a second vote at the December 12th special town meeting. It was soundly rejected a second time. There was a significant higher amount of participation, but proportionally, the no votes were about the same relative to the May annual town meeting prior. And so from there, at the next select board meeting, it was expressed that we would be actively monitoring the situation, reason being that it was a fluid situation. There was one large outstanding item, which was the Supreme Judicial Court, specifically the town of Middleton and the Attorney General, who are tangled up in a dispute over the constitutionality of the MBTA communities law. So a determination has since come down from the Supreme Judicial Court on January 8th, where they determined that the law was viable and constitutional. However, the way they implemented the law was not. And so what that means is, unfortunately, is Middleton is right back where it was. The state just has to go through the proper protocol to roll the law out. And so that really shuts the door on what we have in terms of options. And I know a lot of people were kind of hoping for a different outcome there. What initiated the conversation this evening is a letter that we had been waiting for from the state. We assumed it would come after the SJC decision, basically reaching out and asking where Middleton was in this process. And so on January 27th, we received a correspondence. It's in the packet. It'll go up on the town website, from Secretary Augustus at the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. I'm not going to read the whole thing verbatim. But just some of the higher points. The letter is intended to clarify Middleton's current status and obligations related to compliance with the MBTA Communities Law. On January 8th, 2025, the Supreme Judicial Court published its opinion in the case of Attorney General v. Town of Middleton, confirming the law is constitutional and valid and that the Attorney General has the power to enforce it. Moving on, Middleton has not submitted a district compliance application to EOHLC. The emergency regulations provide Middleton an opportunity to come into interim compliance by submitting a new action plan by February 13th, 2025, and so on. And so what we're hoping to do is kind of translate for the public what that means. When this agenda was put out late in last week, I made a point of reaching out to some folks that I knew in the no camp, just to try to get ahead of it and explain to them that the town is not trying to slip anything through here. I know there's a lot of frustration and distrust surrounding this situation, and so I hope through those folks the word clearly got on to some of you, because there's a decent turnout today. So what we're looking at is when the Supreme Court came down with that decision and the implementation was questioned, I think some people breathed a sigh of relief because they thought surely it would take at least a year or so for the state to come down with new regulations. In actuality, I think it took them 6 days before they got the emergency regulations out the door. There's a lot to unpack in those. We had talked about it in a previous select board meeting, but there were two important elements that I highlighted at the time, and I'll highlight now. And it was two deadlines, one being February 13th, 2025 to get an action plan in place, which is right around the corner. The other one was a July 14th, 2025 deadline to get a zone in place, effectively an MBTA zone, to be in compliance. So the town can't get an MBTA zone in place because it can't pass town meeting. And so that one's pretty clear and obvious. So there's no way of really complying in that capacity. The deadline to submit the action plan is something entirely different, and that's what I wanted to make clear to people in the room. So the action plan is not a commitment in any way to hold the town to hitting that deadline in July. It is merely us checking a box. It's also going to be posted to the website, but the action plan that was put forth by the prior town planner before I was even in Middleton was submitted with little fanfare because there's really not much to it. It's just a simple 3-page form available on the state website where you go through, you say the town's name, you say the unit capacity that we're required to have, which was 750, the planner's name and contact information, my name and contact information. Supplementally, the prior town planner did provide an early map, which actually ended up being the direction we went in. Sometime between here and what the determination was, there was some conversation of Bostic and a couple other areas that were part of an outreach process, some public forums. Some of you participated, where they put a map out on the table and you put like little pieces out to show where you would think the zone would go if appropriate in town. But there's nothing else to it. And I didn't want this to go out and have people panic and say they're trying to slip one in. We said no, we already voted on this twice. Understood. We read the room completely. The important part here, though, is if we submit this action plan, it commits the town to nothing, but it keeps us in interim compliance until we eventually inevitably fall out of compliance in July. It buys us 5 months. And so the question is, well, what are we going to do with those 5 months? Which we have something up on the screen. I know it's kind of, I don't know if you all can see from that back corner, if you want to shift in this way or even get behind me a little bit if it's easier. But what we're doing is taking a hard and thoughtful look at our response to the state's letter. The text is really small there. I'm going to read this in its entirety, so please bear with me. February 4th, Secretary Augustus, I write to you today on behalf of the Middleton Select Board and the citizens we serve. It is my hope to provide an update on Middleton's current status and obligations related to compliance with the MBTA Communities Law. Despite broad support from the Select Board and Planning Board, our legislative body has voiced strong opposition to the implementation of a zoning district under 3A, once at May 14th, 2024 annual town meeting, and a second time at the more recent December 12th, 2024 special town meeting. The purpose of this correspondence is not to dispute the validity or constitutionality of the MBTA Communities Law, a matter already settled by the Supreme Judicial Court on January 8th. Rather, our goal is to take a clear-eyed look at Middleton's obligations relative to our status as a MBTA community. Of the 177 MBTA communities defined in Section 1 of Mass General Law, Chapter 161A, 176 either host a commuter rail or directly abut a community that does. The one exception is Middleton. In fact, the 3 closest commuter rail stations are over 8 miles away from our town center, a 20-minute commute in every direction. A Middleton resident would have to drive out of town entirely through one of our 7 abutting communities to reach a town with a commuter rail station. As highlighted in the attached materials, which we'll go through in a second, Middleton is in a public transit desert. We agree that the housing situation in the Commonwealth has reached crisis levels. As a community, Middleton is committed to doing our part. This includes a refresh of our housing production plan, the recent creation of an active affordable housing trust, as well as the recent permitting of a new 3-story, 60-unit residential structure right in the heart of our town center, a large increase for a community of under 10,000. The goal of the MBTA Communities Act to remove barriers for new housing development near transit is sound. In the words of the EOHLC, quote, "This is not just good housing policy, it is good climate and transportation policy too," end quote. Given our location relative to existing public transit infrastructure, residential development in Middleton has no way of ever supporting that goal. It is not an issue of desire, but rather one of geography. This is a matter we feel should be resolved through productive conversation and partnership. As such, we kindly request your consideration in our effort to correct the MBTA communities map to exclude the only community without commuter rail service within or adjacent to their borders, Middleton, Massachusetts. Any future dialogue on this matter is greatly appreciated. Justin Saltzback, Town Administrator. Thank you. Next slide, Jackie. And so what we're exploring is an element of the map, and to the credit of several others in the community as well. This isn't something that I came up with on my own. I've had many conversations with Planning Board Chair DiGregorio, some members of the ZBA, Bill Renaud, by example, who had some involvement with MBTA communities and the second iteration. Next slide, please. What we're looking at specifically is Middleton, shown in the white. The 7 communities touching Middleton are in fact adjacent to communities with a commuter rail, which are the dark green. But Middleton, in fact, is not adjacent to commuter rail service. And that's the crux of the issue that we're looking to address here. Next slide. We underscore language on the EOHLC's website, which was mirrored in my letter, underscoring the purpose of this legislation is to build denser housing near transit. That's just simply not an option in Middleton. Next slide. This overall shows the physical layout in purple lines of where the physical lines are for the commuter rail and where communities fall in relation to those. And so I went through line by line, community by community for 177 communities, and on an individual basis determined which had either a commuter rail in their borders or were a town touching a community that had commuter rail. There is literally only one. It is Middleton. Next slide. I also took a look at what 3 were closest to us if you were to make that drive. And so the North Beverly commuter rail is 8.1 miles from Memorial Hall, a 19-minute drive. The Reading commuter rail is 8.3 miles, an 18-minute drive. And the Wakefield commuter rail is 8 miles, even an 18-minute drive. And so what we're trying to establish here is the fact that even if something were passed here and even if something were built, all it's going to do is add congestion to roads. It's not actually going to provide any reasonable relief through public transit. So to bring it back around, it is my intention to file this action plan. Based on what I've heard, I do not feel that there is an appetite at this time or the energy or realistically a long enough runway to even have another push to have it come forward at a Maytown meeting. But if we don't put this action plan in place, we are out of compliance as soon as the calendar rolls over to February 14th, which means I can't go through and do my job and advocate for this. And so I understand that once again, there's a lot of people frustrated about it. And I'm happy to hear your thoughts on it through the chairs, if the chairs would like to hear it. But that's the thought at this point in time. That's my plan. That's what I'm looking to move forward with. Once again, in conjunction with the chair of the planning board and anybody else that has interest in the topic. And Anthony, I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that.
Sure. Yeah, so at our last planning board meeting, we talked about the idea of a planning board sponsored letter to the EOHLC, asking them specifically to look at our designation as an adjacent community. The 4 communities, obviously, rapid transit, commuter rail, adjacent community, adjacent small town. Bill Renaud was one of the first people, I think, who mentioned to me that, hey, there's a little bit of a unique anomaly in the mapping where Middleton has a is an outlier compared to many other towns. At our last meeting, the board unanimously said, yeah, let's take a look at it. I don't think it hurts to try and get ahead of any potential litigation that the state may throw our way, and if they do, I think it would look favorably in court that the town of Middleton tried to engage the state prior to a lawsuit. So we have drafted a letter, as well as Justin's letter, to go out to the EOHLC. Again, it's only in a draft form right now, but it basically, very first line says, Planning Board wishes for the state to reconsider our designation as an adjacent community. Gives a little bit of history about the two votes that took place at the normal meeting and the special town meeting. Similar to Justin's letter, it talks about how we're uniquely similar to Bolton and Hudson, Mass., both of which are not considered MBTA communities, but are surrounded by adjacent communities and adjacent small towns. Similar to Middleton, neither one of them directly abut a rapid transit or a commuter rail community. So in the letter, we're asking a member of the EOHLC to join us at our March town meeting with the goal of hopefully
Planning
being...
board meeting, not town.
Planning board meeting, to hopefully request their consideration for us being removed completely as an MBTA community. Again, whether that's successful or not, I'm not sure. We have some other data and some other support that we can provide that I don't think would be necessary to put in the letter, because I don't think it would get us removed from the MBTA zoning completely. But it may help in reducing our requirements from a 50-acre, 750-unit standpoint. Anna, our new town planner, she put together a lot of data that said that we're on the upper end of the density requirements for even adjacent communities. So that's something that we can hopefully hold in our back pocket in case the state decides to dig their heels in and fight us on being removed completely.
And some of the genesis of this is, so in 1999, when the forward funding bill was passed in the legislature, that was supposed to put the MBTA in fiscal sound footing, which really just kicked the can down the road. But at that time, there was a revamp of what was determined as MBTA communities. So prior to 1999-98, you had a community like Attleboro, Mass. that had the largest commuter rail station outside of the city Boston, but was not considered an MBTA community. Because prior to 99, you had MBTA communities, which were historically those that had rapid transportation. Think of the subway. And then you had what was called, can't remember the actual term, but it was those that were receiving a direct benefit from the MBTA. That was done by legislative intent back in the 60s. Middleton was always considered a adjacent community, but not in the purposes of what's being talked here. In 1999, as part of forward funding, the Transportation Committee revamped what was considered an MBTA community. Under this, what is before us, the determination was made of commuter rail and adjacent commuter rail communities. And Middleton clearly falls into that, well, I guess in this, I was going to say gray space, but in this one, it's the white space of we are not adjacent, but we are still deemed by the legislative intent that was done in 1999 as an MBTA community. But you are correct, if you look at the other communities of out towards central Mass of Hudson and I think Bolton, very similar to Middleton. They do not abut a community that has commuter rail. In fact, they are at least one community away, and they were excluded from the MBTA forward funding MBTA community determination. I believe this is probably was an oversight by the MBTA beyond what his EOHLC is doing. I had argued for many years that Middleton shouldn't be in the MBTA district for a whole slew of reasons. One of them is we got zero service from it. No bus, no train, surely no rapid trans. So, I mean, I believe what happened is in their haste of putting together what was the MBTA zoning, they just literally laid it over the MBTA zoning map, and nobody went and did what you and Bill and others did and actually looked at where the delineation is. And this is a very clear hole in their message.
Yep, I agree.
So oh, I'm sorry.
And Natasha, thank you. I used some of the verbiage from the SJC verdict where, we talk about how Middleton does not benefit directly or indirectly from MBTA services. So we use that verbiage.
Rick, if I may. So this, because we're mixing two things together here. So we have a great find by Justin and his crew in the planning board, and great arguments why Middleton should not be part of the MBTA zone. That has absolutely nothing to do with us submitting a plan to make some February 13th deadline. I fully support the letter that Justin wrote and Anthony's planning, in conjunction with the planning board, to ask that we be removed from the MBTA zone, because it's quite obvious we shouldn't even be in it. But as far as to send an interim compliance letter, that has nothing, it's a totally separate thing. People voted at town meeting that they want nothing to do with the MBTA zone. I think it hurts our argument to try and get out of the MBTA zone and then submit a plan, especially Anthony just mentioned that his letter suggests that 50 acres and 750 units is too much. And here we're talking about submitting a plan with 50 acres and 750 units. That throws a monkey wrench in. It's fighting each other. So Anthony has a plan, let's lower the amount, and we're talking about putting a plan with that exact amount. That makes no sense to me. This shouldn't, in my opinion, even be a consideration for the town of Middleton to submit a plan. Nothing has changed. We knew when we voted in December that December 31st was the cutoff, and we're not in compliance. The only thing that's changed now, it's February 13th. We knew that when we voted. This shouldn't be here. There's a group of people here tonight. You know why those people are here? Unfortunately, because they don't trust us to do the will of the people. That's why they're here. They feel they need to be here so that we do the will of two town meetings. And I think that the letter should go out asking that we be removed from the MBTA zone, but to submit a plan, especially with 50 acres and 750 units, is just a slap in the face to the two town meeting votes, and I can't even believe we're talking about it.
Nope.
Rick, may I speak?
Sure. My thought is to submit the letter, and if I could throw a last-second edit when you mentioned the 60-unit thing, that 40B be put in that, please. Because I want something in the record, never mind, no plan, but I want something in the record, okay? Not just sitting somewhere, I like it, just send the letter, but that could wind up filed somewhere. Somehow respond in this manner with a letter that puts it on the record for them, because my only concern all along was, I'm happy with the no votes. My only concern was legal exposure. And they've given their emergency rules, but they still haven't come out with what it is they're going to do to communities that don't comply. So we don't know that. And, I'm just concerned with eliminating our cell. If maybe this letter and send it in without a plan, they reject it, as that's not what we asked. Fine, but we've got it in the record, in with the EOHLC, that's what we did. So when down the road, if something comes about, as you mentioned, we have something in there that, pointed out our unique situation. And that's where I am on that.
Yeah, I agree to send the letter that Justin wrote saying we shouldn't be in MBTA zone, the letter the planning board drafted saying the same thing, and saying if we are, it should be less units. I fully support sending those two letters in. What I don't support is sending.
You don't see it we can accomplish, by just sending it in by February 13th?
I don't think the February.
I think they'll turn around and tell us to pound it.
I think the February 13th date's irrelevant to the town of Middleton. The town of Middleton voted no twice. As far as I'm concerned, the February 13th date doesn't exist. It means nothing. We're right where we were, and we need to advocate to get out of this MBTA zone. We had Bruce Tarr, the state rep and state senator, and Brad Jones, the state rep and state senator here 2 weeks ago, and we talked at length about we have to take all our energy into what we can do to help them change the law or to get us out of this thing. That was the whole discussion we had with them.
Right.
And then 2 weeks later, oh, we're going to submit another plan. That to me, I just unconscionable. I don't understand what town meeting twice, people came out twice and voted no, and now they felt the need to come out tonight from their busy lives because they don't trust us to uphold their votes. I just don't understand it.
Rick, may I?
Yes, sorry.
So, sitting with this hat on, I also wear an assessor's hat. I have this in 2 communities. The MBTA has been shoved down everyone's throat. I am not going to drive that home. We are all aware of it. We've all lived this. At the end of the day, from my point of view, sitting here in this seat, my reason for thinking that these letters are great, and yes, we should be trying to get out of it. To Brian's point, we should have never been in it. Mistakes happen even at the higher level of government than where we're sitting right here. At the end of the day, there is no harm in filling out that paperwork if it ends up, they're not done with this litigation. I am here to tell you, again, I live this in 2 towns. They're not done with this litigation. There is more to come. Things are going to change over and over and over because there is pushback from many communities for their own purposes that fit their community. Now, I can tell you, sitting here last Saturday and hearing budgets, let me tell you, I've heard so many times, keep your $2 million. People, we cannot afford not to have these grant monies. We can't. Your infrastructure, your budget, your school budget, your road budget, all over. And that's where I stand from a financial point, trying to keep this town in a financial situation, not to comply and bow down to the state. At the end of the day, all of this stuff with the MBTA is still fluid. It's still going on. There's still talks. There are still changes. There is no harm in sending that in. That's going to be my vote, just to be transparent. These letters are vital. We need to keep talking to our state reps to get out of the MBTA altogether.
So the only thing I would caution is to actually, so there's 2 points here. One of them is the Chapter 3A MBTA zoning requirements, and the other one is the MBTA community. I would tell you, to be removed from the MBTA community isn't a decision by EOHLC. It's not even a decision by the MBTA. That would have to be done legislatively through an act of the legislature that would be enacted and then signed by the governor. I could tell you, if there was a bill pending in the legislature today to remove Middleton from the MBTA zoning, it would be an amendment frenzy because there would be many communities that would want to be out of the. So this year on our draft cherry sheet, which is what we get from the town from local aid and what we from the state and what we pay to the state on assessments, we are going to be paying about $250,000 in local tax dollars to supplement the MBTA for the right of being told that we are a MBTA community. So I would tell you right now, if tomorrow the legislature voted to remove Middleton from the MBTA district, it would be $250,000 that would be shorted from the dollars that go to the MBTA. What I mean by that, it would be an amendment frenzy in every community in Massachusetts that's in the MBTA district that could argue that they don't get direct service. We surely don't get direct service. We don't even get indirect service. So I would think the likelihood of that being done legislatively is somewhere between Slim and none, and Slim already left town. However, the point of what's being shown here and the argument of what the EOHLC regulations state as an adjacent to a communal rail community is what makes you have to fall into compliance with this law that was passed by the legislature also, and signed by the governor also, and enforced by the attorney general. The difference is, this isn't about being in or out of the MBTA communities. This is about their own regulations about EOHLC, not Massachusetts Department of Transportation, Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. So I don't want this argument to be, well, we just need to get ourselves taken out of the MBTA district, because I will tell you, legislatively, that is never, our legislative delegation, which is the House and Senate Minority Leader, could actually be made up of the Speaker and the Senate President, and we're not going to get taken out of the MBTA district. You would have to amend the 1999 forward funding mechanism. It just ain't going to happen.
So with that said, we're going to send the letters, we're going to try and get out of the district, and as Brian said.
Or
the chances-
reallocate.
The chances of it happening, don't get our hopes up. I agree with Brian. So that actually says that we're exactly where we were at town meeting. Because if we, that's not even a factor in a decision whether to send the plan in or not. So now, take that off the table, and now we are sitting here tonight exactly with the same decisions that we sat with at town meeting, and we don't have a quorum of the town here. If we did, they would probably advise us not to send that letter, but they're not here. But we're in the exact same spot we were in December when the townspeople of Middleton told us that they don't want the MBTA zone. And here we're talking about starting the process all over, because sending this plan in
I think
is
the one
starting the
difference of where we
process all
were,
over.
I think the difference of where we were on the morning of December 13th is, on December 12th and 13th, we didn't understand that we were no longer an adjacent community. That's the one big difference. That's the one big difference.
So a couple points here. So some people, I think that there was a theme, right, that we weren't adjacent. I don't think it had been definitively proven that we were the only one. And that's the important piece to this, for me anyway. And to the point of the fact that if the second the state opens the door a crack, the door is going to get kicked in by everybody else. If we highlight something that is unique and specific to us, that doesn't give any other town the ability to try to sneak out through that same crack, that's our only shot. There's an important element of this, which is when the action plan was submitted in '23, it wasn't voted on, and it's not going to be voted on tonight either. It's an administrative act, and it's something that comes from my office. And so, Mr. Garber, you and I don't see eye to eye on this one, but we've had many conversations on it, and I have a lot of respect for you. And I've heard the element of trust come up twice this evening, so I want to ask you, do you trust me?
I don't know.
I'm asking Mr. Garber. Mr. Garber, do you trust me?
I trust you, and I trust that.
I need you to trust my approach on this.
But I could lose some trust if you submit this plan, because the people of Middleton is voted not to, so I would probably lose some trust for you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Garber, respectfully, the people of Middleton voted on an MBTA zone. They didn't vote on whether or not to submit an action plan. They didn't vote on whether or not the MBTA communities law was valid, or they acknowledged whether or not they were valid. What the people of Middleton are voting on is a zoning plan. It failed twice, and it's not an option available to my office anymore. This is an option. If we don't put forth an action plan, that option is gone.
I don't think that no vote was because of that specific plan, and they didn't want it. The clear message from town meeting was, we don't want an MBTA zone in Middleton. It wasn't that they were voting on that specific plan, and if it had been moved over, maybe they would have voted. No, the people, we work for the citizens of Middleton. The citizens of Middleton. To hear you say,
And the
that you don't wanna
citizens
hear
surely said no.
You don't want to hear from these two boards to give you guidance, and you're going to do whatever you want, regardless of how these boards view. I'd like to hear from everyone at this table, and I would be surprised if the majority of people, elected people at that table and this table, were against sending that plan in. I would be very disappointed if you sent that plan in.
So I would tell you, this is this, if we continue down the road with an expectation that we're going to come back to town meeting, I'd be wildly disappointed. I think what I've heard very clearly from the town administrator is that's not even on the radar screen right now. It's not even being discussed about.
You guys have a vote on it, but you won't bring it back.
And then I would tell you that this board would be the board that would, as you know by zoning process, there's several ways to bring things to town meeting. There is this board, it could be an initiative petition by the public, or it could, in some cases, by the planning board. And I can tell you, this board, majority or minority, doesn't have an interest in bringing this back before town meeting. What I have an interest in is having an opportunity to be heard on this, because the state's going to actually have to respond to us, not to a letter, but if our action plan states that we are actually not covered by their regulations because of this, that's actually putting a stake in the ground.
I'm in favor of putting that stake in the ground.
But a letter is,
we're
the letter, if we submit a letter under Jason's signature that says, "Dear Mr. Secretary, by the way, we think you're wrong," I can tell you, we're more likely than not to get a response. We're more likely than not going to get a response.
Right before that, because I'm not, I don't want to see this come up for a vote again. And I also, which may be too much to ask, I want us to try to be as, to have a leg to stand on if and when ramifications come for cities and towns that went against the law. To do nothing and let the 12th go by, to Brian's point, I think we can agree on this. Given this as part of the so-called plan, not a plan with, again, areas or acreage or anything like that, but to make sure that we get some response. And, the response might be, well, this isn't an action plan. Okay, fine, but we've got something on the record in where it belongs, should something come down the pike. Voting on it again, it ever coming up, I'm against it all the way. It's enough is enough, but again, it feels to say that, well, what if we get sued? I don't care. Well, then time goes on, and then if we don't have something, in there on our side, for if and when that day ever comes, that to me is just irresponsible.
Everybody knew that December 31st at that time was a drop dead date, and it was over, and we were in non-compliance. The only thing that's changed is that December 31st has changed to February 13th. Nothing else has changed.
No.
So all we're doing is we're upserting the vote of town meeting by kicking this can. The town meeting gave a message, let the December 31st date pass with us not in compliance. That was the message that town meeting gave. And that December 31st has changed to February 13th, and now we're doing the exact opposite of the direction that the citizens of Middleton voted to do. And I just can't even believe we're having this conversation.
No, but so you think it hurts us to send a letter to them in the form of an action plan? Not that it's a plan, we're not, opening up or changing the location, but give them a notification from us of this. It clearly says in the first paragraph that we voted it down twice. Are you fine with that? I mean, does that hurt us?
I'm fine with sending the planning board letter, our letter, which is what we exactly discussed with the state legislator and state senator, that we were going to put our energy toward things like that and take our energy off of other things.
Okay.
And that even came up in that discussion. And then 2 weeks later, our energy, and we're taking our eye off the ball of trying to either get out of the zone or work with the legislature to change the law, and our eyes off the ball, and we're submitting a plan. And our own planning board is saying that the plan we're going to submit, they feel has more acreage and units that's appropriate for this town. So you have our planning board sending something to the state saying the acreage is too big and there's too many units, and we have our town administrating a plan. Here's a great plan with 50 acres and 750 units. I just can't understand that.
We're not sending a plan.
No, I haven't seen that.
No, I don't think we're sending any plans, right?
I
think
haven't
it's an
even seen
action
that.
pl-
No, he wants to send a
There's no
plan.
plan being attached.
An action plan, what if
Or is
in the
there a
action plan we
requirement of it?
reference the planning board letter and say, as part of our action plan is to have dialogue with the EOHLC related to our designation change as it relates to Mass General Law.
Justin is saying to send an actual MBTA zone.
No, he never said, he said just
That is not what he said.
You weren't listening.
A map, a map
No.
with.
I specifically said I would not. I just said it in this meeting that I would
He isn't
not.
going to send.
I'm not going to include that in the action plan. It's called an action plan. It's literally.
Right, that's what they're calling it.
And there's some
It's a vehicle to send it, but it's not gonna consist of anything more than what we're.
It's going to say, this is the plan that the town of Middleton is considering.
No.
And it's going to show a
No, it's
zone.
not.
Justin read it.
I just read it.
Justin read it.
It's more than that letter you're sending.
So Jeff, the action
it's
plan that we
literally-
submitted, before, that you supported as a member of this board when it was brought before this board, would be the same thing. The difference was our previous town planner sent ahead what she thought would be addressed by the planning board. There was no requirement.
You're sending a map
There's
in with
no
the plan.
requirement in that action plan to actually have a map or an area or any designation.
He's not sending a
So,
map in.
so this is all what was sent extra that is not.
Not required.
We're not proposing a zone.
For whatever reason, the previous planner did that, and there was no requirement to.
What we're proposing is this 4-page form that they provide that highlights what their expectations are of us.
Which is what you
Which will have
supported, Jeff.
nothing in
Which
it.
is what you supported, Jeff, when
It
it
has
came
no,
before this
no
board.
zone in it,
No
no.
map, no nothing.
Nothing proposed.
So that's everything you're going to send, that you have in your hand?
Correct.
With this letter on top of it.
Well, no, this is the 2023 version, but it's going to be the same form.
Can I see it?
Sure. It's in your packet.
Which is the same thing, Jeff, that you supported when
go
it came
to
before this
page-
board.
I understand, that, you know, the
We don't have.
citizens feeling concerned and worried because they're not in it, but that, you know, that's,
not our
that,
letter.
we don't
We're not
have
sending
a
anything
zone
other than
overlay
one
for MBTA. We don't have it.
We
And
don't.
we're not
We
gonna
voted
have
it
one.
down.
We're not gonna
It's
have
been
one.
shot down.
But again,
It's done.
for the
We're
only
not
vehicle
going
that's
back.
left, it's the last thing to do, is to have something on file, so if we wind up in litigation, we, you know, we've got something there. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just
Yep,
ask a
sure.
clarifying question? Natasha Bansfield, White Lane. Okay, so Justin submits the letter for the February 13th deadline. The next, correct me if I'm wrong, the next deadline is in July. Is that right?
Yeah,
So we do nothing.
we do nothing.
The July date passes, and then what?
Then we're out of compliance.
We're out of
We're out of
compliance. Yeah,
compliance.
we do nothing.
So my question is, what do we gain by staying in for that? I mean, at some point, we have to die on the hill, right? We have to pick, which hill are we going to die on? Is it the
So-
February, the July?
So in a timely fashion, we've responded, albeit not like they're gonna
Yep.
wanna see with this, what we're discussing here.
Sure.
I don't know, if's a big word, but, you know, whatever happens between then with all these other communities and the whole thing is, as
Exactly.
everyone said, it's fluid. I mean, who knows? But July 14th then comes and that's the end of it.
My hope is the EOHLC looks at this and says, one less community we have to fight. And it's unique in the geographical nature that Justin mentioned and presented. So if they do come to our planning board meeting, that's our goal, is to, I may have misspoke when I said take us out of the MBTA communities. It is to reconsider our designation
Right.
Under
des-
under 3A.
under three, as it relates to 3A.
There's still many moving parts in this whole thing.
Okay, so
We are not asking
more likely
the
than not
town
that
to
we're
go
gonna
back
continue-
and vote for MBTA. It's gone, it's over.
It's more
done.
likely than not that we're going to be non-compliant on July, whatever the date is.
14th.
But I will tell you, if we're non-compliant on February 14th, we're going to have a very hard time making an argument to the
That's
state, and
our
specifically
point.
to Secretary Augustus and EOHLC, that there's an error in the process.
That's right.
Their response is going to be, well, you're non-compliant, and that's it. And compliance comes, interim compliance comes from a 3-page document that says, here's the town administrator, here's the town planner, here's our community, here's our population, and so forth. In addition to that is clearly going to be attached to that, by the way, your designation is incorrect. But if we send it with your designation is incorrect and it's February 14th, Valentine's Day, I guess, we get a big I love you back from them that says you're non-compliant. This just gives us more runway to make the argument that their regulations are wrong, that they've
Incorrect.
misinterpreted them as it relates to the single community of the 177 that should not be a part of this.
They missed the overlay,
And
basically.
it,
They
well,
missed us
exactly,
on the
and,
overlay.
and if it still ends up being that we're non-compliant, we're non-compliant. I absolutely am not going back to town meeting to ask for another vote on that location or any location in Middleton.
No.
And even if I wanted to, it's not gonna pass. So it'll be a waste of time and energy. And I think this is
And money.
a much better route to show that we are trying to be compliant, because the way that we think we can be compliant is show that we shouldn't be in it because of their own regulations, and we're following your process up until 2 failed votes, and there won't be a third vote.
So when we spoke yesterday, Justin, you said you were submitting a map with the plan. You said, I hope they accept the same map because because it was already voted down.
So
We
if-
talked about that yesterday.
So if we send this out to them, and they come back and say you need to include something, what I offered was I would give them the same map that was
So
previously
there is
provided.
a map and a zone, but
There's
there's
no
no
requirement.
If we got to that point, but there's no,
There is
but
the
there's no
if.
obligation, and that's what we're trying to get.
That's what we talked about
But
yesterday.
we're not sending anything.
Yesterday we were, today we're not, I don't know.
Instead of sending a compliance, that document, could we send your letter in lieu of?
I'm gonna send both together. I'm sending both.
You have to send the application. Or, to Brian's point, if we don't send that compliance application, the letter is just that. It is just a letter. The planning boards is just a letter. This application is holding us accountable that we're trying and doing every due diligence to get them to understand that they have not done the overlay correctly for the town of Middleton. Please go back and revisit our designation. We are not asking them to revisit that we're coming back for MBTA. We're not. There's
Well, we are-
nobody
we are.
up here.
But I-
No, we're
from my-
not.
I agree
with
We're
Jeff.
not.
I
No,
agree with
we're
Jeff's
not.
point, because it's as though you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth at the same time. It's like, here's a compliance letter, we're not going to comply. Like, which
No,
one?
we're going to comply with the interim compliance.
I
The
don't know
interim
how to
compliance is the
explain
first step in compliance. The ultimate compliance, it's not even compliance, it's showing that you're following the steps. The ultimate compliance is the passage of a zone change or an overlay, which has failed twice and is not going to come back a third time. We have 10 days until we're out of official compliance that would state, if we don't file the interim, we couldn't go do something. Even if all of a sudden everybody said, let's do an MBTA zoning, and it passed unanimously at town meeting, we're already out of compliance on February 14th. That's the problem. So, if we are out of compliance on February 14th, we can send this letter to Secretary Augustus, and he sits on it till February 14th. It's a dead moot issue. So, only thing I want, and I want to be very clear to everybody in this room, I do not plan on doing anything to pass MBTA zoning at town meeting, which is the
Or to
only-
even get it
Or
there.
even to put it on town meeting warrant. We opened the warrant today, I raised my right hand, I am not putting it on the warrant, nor will I vote to put it on the warrant. However, I'm trying to give us an ability to put a stake in the ground with EOHLC between what would be today and July 15th,
July.
mid-July, whatever the day of. If not, we have until February 4th to February 13th to get the EOHLC to respond to this, and I can pretty much guarantee they're not, if we sent the letter today, they will not respond by the 14th. They'll wait until we're officially out of compliance by not filing the 3-page pre-document and say, you're not in compliance, we're sorry. Next.
Can we see the completed application?
This was the 2023 version. We haven't filled it out
See
yet.
it when you're done with it?
I'll distribute it
Yeah,
once I,
yeah.
once I send it. I'll certainly distribute it publicly, so.
Everything on the website. There's
I didn't
very
have
few
any
things that
confusion.
aren't up there.
I never had any confusion that this was not a responding with a plan. This was, for me, clearly was a nice letter of decline. That, and again, so that whether it's even after July 14th, something comes back that, we
I'm confused, because I was told yesterday that a plan was going in with that. I was told by you yesterday that.
It's called an action plan. I don't know how.
But it does
It's
not
the
have.
word,
a
just
plan
like
for that.
MBTA doesn't mean a bus.
So,
That action plan doesn't mean a plan
I was
as a
told there was a
map.
map.
so what I showed you yesterday was, as example, what Katrina O'Leary filed in 2023. It's not what we're filing. And I apologize if there was any confusion there.
Because you actually said they might not like this map that I'm sending with it because we submitted it before. You said that.
Could I have been referencing that map?
No.
I don't know what to tell you, but we had people come by Memorial Hall today with the expectation that there would be a vote. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what this is, despite my best efforts to get ahead of it. So I don't know if there's much more to discuss here.
There's not.
You want to say? Yeah, go ahead. Just
Do
tell us who
we-
you are, where you live.
Michelle Shank, 5 Emerson Lane. So I just want to be clear. You are submitting the form. You're not sending any plans at all, correct?
Beyond that.
Yeah.
You're not sending what the...
No, I'm not
prior-
sending a proposed MBTA
Zoning
zone.
plan.
Okay.
Right.
But you did just say a minute ago, if you send that and then
Right.
they get back to you and ask for it, you would then send it to them?
If they called, I don't know what's going to happen. So I could send this to them, they could kick it back the next day and say no. I could send it to them, they could kick it back 2 months later and say no. Or I could send it to them and they could say, all right, let's have a conversation. But if they reach out, say, 6 weeks later and say, well, we need you to identify some type of zone, I would more than likely say, well, I can offer up, like, here are in the two instances prior, here was the zone that was offered, but we don't have any anticipation of a vote on this in May. There's nothing else to offer.
Even if they
them.
send the map, it doesn't matter if he sends the map or not, what we're gonna do the overlay, it wasn't voted on.
was
So
defeated.
it never-
If they do ask them that, we don't send them nothing.
No, I just
Well,
want
let's hear that from
Because
Justin. If they
it's
ask us,
just,
they'll send them
it's
nothing.
confusing, like, just some of the questions, and I just want to
Yeah.
be clear, okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't commit us to anything, and I feel like that has been spread around in some capacity, that this would
It
somehow.
starts the
like,
ball
trigger-
rolling.
There's no ball. It doesn't trigger anything.
Okay.
It's
So it's
checking a
basically you
box.
sending that form, and so that's just a vehicle in order to get the letter
Yes.
on somebody's desk.
Correct. And then we'll follow up to the governor's office and to the secretary's office, as well as our state house delegation, and do it that way. But if we go out of compliance and try to move forward on this, it's like trying to shake someone's hand with one hand with your fist cocked back in the other. Like, no one's gonna wanna play with us. Like, we need to try to do this a little bit with a smile, and I understand the reservation some people have in the room. But this is the only shot we have here, and it's a long shot at that. It's no shot if we don't put in an action plan.
And nowhere on that form does it say, as part of your submittal, you have to include a zoning plan.
No.
Correct. There isn't even a spot to sign it. I mean, if you want to look, I mean, like, distribute it if you want to take a look. I mean, this thing is the most vanilla form in the world.
It gets a little confusing too, because we have one of the select board members like arguing why we need the $2 million. So then it just
I
gives-
was not, excuse me, ma'am, I was not arguing.
Well, you were.
What I said was I made a statement of the need that the town has for any grant money. The MBTA is shot down. We're out of compliance
But I'm
there.
just saying,
We're
at this-
hoping to keep a stake in the ground.
At this
No, please
meeting-
let me finish. Let me finish. At the end of the day, all of the documents for MBTA passage means that it had to pass at town meeting. It has not done that. There's nobody up here willing, nor do we have an appetite to put it back on there. We're not going to.
I was saying it just to try to help the board realize that the town is having trouble trusting decisions. So, and that's why you bringing it up at this time just further makes us feel.
Alls I was doing was just putting the information out there.
Okay, I was just
that
giving you
the
my
money-
opinion, honey. It was
the
just my
money is
opinion.
tight.
My opinion.
And
So
there's
anyways,
grant money.
I'm hoping that what you're saying and what you're representing is true.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we do have to trust you. And
we're going to give you the trust, and I just hope that you earn it and make us all feel good about supporting it.
Thank you.
And I would never, ever do anything like that or behind anything. And I'm sorry, because when I discussed with Justin, I specifically said, looking at saying, I like the letter. Okay, yeah, you put it by me that thing, and I go, I don't want it to say this, that, or anything. Okay, and we'll see that before it happens, before it goes out, because that's the end of it. It really is. And yeah, the concern, I get it from people because it was a big deal, and I totally get it. But I'm not going to ask you to trust me just to say that I guess people have voted for me to have me here because I hope that I'm show good judgment and try to be right down the middle. And my only concern all along was it's nice to have the extra money for stuff. The biggest deal of all was a concern about legal exposure, which and I'm not trying to scare anybody into it, but
still
still
financial.
exists. And who knows what's going to happen with that? Maybe, I don't know. But I like the idea of giving a response in this fashion that tells them nicely.
State's not going to show their hand on legal enforcement until after July.
Correct.
They won't show their hand beforehand. Again, that's why we have a short runway to make our case. If it's after the 14th and we don't submit, we're not going to be able to make the case. If we can't make it by July 13th, we're still going to, if we submit this document on the 13th, we are technically in compliance until July 13th. So let's give us the runway to do so. Let's give the town administrator the runway to do so, to work the success that he's had on different items around town with both the Department of Transportation and other agencies. Our delegation is abundantly clear on this. We talked about that 2 weeks ago with them. I've talked to them since, specifically about this. Let's give the runway to see if we can actually make the argument. If not, we may be having a completely different discussion on this on July 14th if the state starts to enforce with some type of legal action. And then that's where we, and I assume other communities, are going to have to start defending, or I don't know what else the Attorney General will do. I can't even guess.
I agree. I think without sending the action plan and just sending the select board letter, the planning board letter, those two pressure points alone are not going to get us any type of conversation with the EOHLC.
They'll ignore it.
It's got to go to them. Yeah, it has to go to them, and that's the way they've got it. That's not going to satisfy what they want. Maybe they don't tell us till the 14th that we're out, or maybe they call right away and say that you're out. But fine, I'm fine with that, whether it comes earlier or later. But to get it, like I said, get it in the proper, I don't know how else to say it in there, because something's going to, eventually something will happen. And they will have already said, for the longest time, we don't even know why we're in this. I don't believe they're ever going to pull us out of it, right? So it's not going to happen. But
to Rick's point, so if they come back and say they want a plan, are you going to send a plan?
More than likely, I would say here's what was offered at the May and December town meetings. At this point in time, there's not an appetite.
So the 50 acres and the 750 units?
Same spot, yeah.
Is not what you suggested.
yeah, I would have a discussion if they get back and at that. Let's have a discussion and see what that actually does for us.
Right.
Vic, go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you. Rachel Nemeth, 29 North Main Street. I just noticed that the wording is more than likely, probably, it would have been nice if there were actual letters to show us, even though we may not have an official role in this decision. I'd also like to know what connection the decision to send an action plan has to the expiration of the $2 million grant letter that we talked about at town meeting. That, I understand, expires in February or March at some point, I think. It just seems like sending an action plan is speaking out of both sides of our mouths and kind of undermining our position that this is not something that we're considering. It just seems to be a foot in the door, and I'd like to know the date when the letter for the $2 million grant, when that expires, and what connection it has to
It has no connection to this action plan.
Well, what's the date? What's the date that it
I can
expires?
speak to it, because I touched on it a bit in my TA report at the beginning of the meeting. So there's a deadline of January 30th to enter into a contract with the Commonwealth to initiate those $2 million funds. And as I expressed, it's been put in a little bit of a gray area, because the expectation for the letter that I believe you're referencing when they awarded the grant was expected compliance by December 31st, 2024. However, since that letter has been received and since we passed that deadline, the Supreme Judicial Court came in early January and pushed back that deadline. And so the question that we haven't ourselves received an answer to is, by pushing that deadline back, does that mean that $2 million at least is safe, and then every grant thereafter is at jeopardy? We don't have a definitive answer to that.
So this seems like a hope that that might still be available. So the reason to submit the action plan and pretend that there might be an action plan would be in hopes of claiming the money for the letter.
So it doesn't hurt it.
Mutually exclusive, right?
My opinion is the $2 million's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone, it's
Maybe,
it's
but I don't know who
evaporated.
would have
And
that.
what usually happens in that grant program is, if somebody that receives the grant isn't able to actually accomplish the grant, the dollars get put back into the mix, and they'll say, oh, look, here's a town that applied that didn't get grant, and they're gonna call them and say, can you get your project done? That $2 million is probably already being reallocated by somebody with a green eye shade at the agency of moving it elsewhere. For me, this has nothing to do with the $2 million. That's gone. That intersection's probably not gonna get done in our lifetime. For me, this is all about the community of Middleton. That is the one community out of 177 that doesn't match their requirements. This is all about trying to get them to stand up and admit that, and then take us out. Why? It's not because I want MBTA zoning. I don't want the Attorney General suing the town of Middleton, nor do I want the state coming in and trying to exert something on us. This is our only bite at the apple. It's not going to get done legislatively, because they'll never do it for one town legislatively. I'm trying to get it done through their regulations.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Yes.
Linda Richards again, and just to simplify this for me and maybe others, the EOHLC actually can remove us from the MBTA zone, from this thing, by looking at the map and saying, oh yeah, we should have noticed that before. Not that it's going to be that easy.
No.
But they could do that. That
So
does-
the authority doesn't rest entirely with the EOHLC, and that's part of the issue here, is that I think it's, with each party we go to, I think they can point their finger to someone else and we'll just keep going in circles. So EOHLC is responsible for enforcing and administering the law, the MBTA communities law. So we're starting with them. The person or the people that can actually release us would be the legislature. I don't think the legislature would have an appetite, as Mr. Cresta referenced. Even if they did, I don't think they would do it unless they got a nod from the governor's office to do it. And that's why we're trying to hit all three of those elements at once.
So, but they're the ones that identified and recommended these communities
For the guidelines, yes.
for the guidelines.
Mhm.
So they are certainly in a position to go and back to the power that exists and say, we made a mistake on this one.
That's
So they-
what we're trying to do.
They could do that.
In a perfect world.
Okay, well, you know,
Create
I
a
mean,
new category. There's adjacent communities, adjacent small town, and a community that is not adjacent to an adjacent community, and put us in that category, and,
And we'd probably be a category of one.
yeah.
In which case, to be clear, because I know there's been a lot of conversation of like, it's never going to come up again. More than likely. However, like, and I'm probably shooting myself in the foot here, but if something came forward and say they redesignated us, that's information we'd bring back to the people of Middleton, and obviously you'd have an opportunity to discuss that. If they said, all right, it's not 750 units, it's 100 units, or whatever it is for a small town
Or-
designated.
It might be nothing.
Or nothing, or somewhere, I don't know, but any movement on that, we would bring back. And, you know, probably I'd say in the form of a public forum to feel out this group. I mean, that, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen there.
but having that, if that happened, that would certainly put us in a better position to be an N of one to petition the legislature to be removed from MBTA, which is a savings of
I'd love to get out
$250,000.
I would love to get out of the MBTA because we don't get anything for it, but we fund the MBTA, but nobody in the Cape Cod funds the MBTA.
So in a decade, just not funding that, we're way over that 2 million.
Oh, yeah.
So, and getting removed from this because of that map that we had up here is a step in that direction. If we can prove that we shouldn't have been there in the first place, then that makes it easier to go without the amendments you talk about, because now we are an N of 1.
Somebody at a state agency has to, and I'm hoping it's EOHLC, has to stand up and say, something's not right here, and we think Middleton, unfortunately, is being painted with a brush that doesn't represent them. And that's, if we can even get that argument made, I think it will put us in a better position if the communities that have not adopted MBTA zoning, and then there's some type of legal action against, I'm hoping, if I can, even at the minimum, if I can get us out of legal action, this will be a win.
So that form, and that form has to go with that letter in order to get official action, right? Otherwise, it's just a letter.
It's just a letter.
It's just a friendly letter.
I don't know if I agree
Well,
with
I
that.
mean,
Not
yes and no,
necessarily.
but if you had your choice to be heard, that would be the way.
So then if they want a map, the map they should be sent was the one we looked, that one.
Yes.
No, not that map. He's talking about
So,
Go ahead and send them any
at MBTA zone. map.
zoning, nothing.
That-
everything in this slide deck is going to be included with that letter, with the
Right,
action plan.
Okay. All right, and the
To
other
highlight the point.
thing that I would just say is that I think it's great that the deadline date is July 14th, because it's poetic that it should be Bastille Day. Arm the fortress.
Although there were a lot that died on the wall there, though.
We may be among them.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead. You gotta come up, though. Say who you are, where you live.
I'm going to be really quick. Anita Cohen, 183 Boston Street. I was a little confused as well, initially hearing that we're submitting an action plan and then we're getting letters. So just for clarification, the letter of intent to possibly have us removed from the Middleton adjacent town classification is our action plan? Is that why we're submitting it? That's how I'm,
That's all I'm looking
We're
at.
filing it with it.
okay.
Right.
Okay,
more
so
or
the
less,
action
yeah.
plan is just the form, and then we're including that letter so that it's actually entered into a docket, into a file, certified, we have proof, we submit them something.
I don't think that's the case, no.
Okay.
It's two completely separate things. We're sending that, in my opinion, we're sending that letter asking to be out of the zone. That's not the action plan. To be in compliance, you need an action plan that you're working on an MBTA zone in your town.
well.
That's what, so we're sending a plan saying we're working on an MBTA zone in our town, and also we're sending a letter, we shouldn't be in the MBTA zone because we're one of one.
So, I think I'm thinking like you, so for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
we're not doing that action plan, we're doing our own. We just tell them,
Yeah, in my mind, I'm understanding that when we're submitting this form with the letter, we're basically saying to the state, we're kind of not going to comply with you. This is our response. Our action plan is, I think we're willing to fight you. In my mind, is
I
that?
don't think that's the case.
No?
I
Well,
wouldn't
that-
word it that
I'd
strong.
rather write a
Yeah,
letter
no.
letter now in response to
Okay.
that than later be
Okay.
involved in some litigation and
Right.
then be making our case.
I just didn't
You don't
understand,
know.
like, to file the form of the action plan. In my mind, I thought I was maybe understanding the letter is the action
No.
plan that we're trying to be redesignated
No,
or
so it's the
reclassified?
action plan, it's called an action plan. It's
It's a
this
form.
four-form
Right.
document.
That doesn't really tell you what the community is proposing.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of nothing. To be honest, I think it's been kind of blown into something bigger
The
than it
action
actually
plan,
is.
if I had to guess, was so the state could actually put together a big database of what does what does the town have for, like, how are you designated? And we're designated as an adjacent community. Who is your town planner? Who's your municipal CEO, which at the time was Andy Sheehan, it's now Justin. And then questions like, does this municipality have any established housing goals or strategies? Yes, we do. We have a master plan, we have a housing production plan, which we're required to have anyway. Questions, and I'm reading this all off because I think a lot of people probably haven't seen this document. Describe relevant strategies that the town has had around housing. We've had a master plan, we've created an affordable housing trust that several members of the room here are on, and then talks about, describe other housing work that is underway right now. Very simple questions. There's nothing here that...
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
The most important questions and answers. When it says MBTA community name, obviously Middleton, community category, when it says adjacent community, we should respond with not applicable, and then obviously see reference letter. Included or multifamily unit capacity requirement, where it says the 750, I would put a big 0 because we're fighting them on it.
Yeah,
So
no,
I don't know how the town is
I don't
planning on
disagree.
responding. Those are the questions that I'm concerned about.
I
Like,
would
what
put
is
an-
the town's
I would
response?
put an asterisk maybe.
Okay,
but
see
they-
included letter or
Yeah,
something?
because the issue is that
It's those questions that I'm concerned about.
the way that we
All right.
fall into that category, it's thank you.
Was the state's designation.
Right, it's the state's designation, it's vernacular, they already attached to us erroneously, and so that technically is the category we're in. But the problem is when you point it out to EOHLC, they point to the law, and the law points to what Brian was referencing in the 90s when Middleton got looped into it. And so I wouldn't want to lose sight of that, but I wouldn't mind putting an asterisk.
Yeah, it's how we answer the questions on the form that I think will be concerning to people if we see that.
But our messaging to the state.
I just want to make sure that's not included, because that's where the trust, I think, as a new resident, a newcomer to Middleton, it'll seem like, oh, typical same old politics as usual. So that, it's the answer to those questions that I think are really important and
In
would
my
need
mind,
clarity.
that is like a letter of intent
Yeah.
to enact an MBTA zone. That is the best way I can describe that. It's a letter of, that's what that is. It's a letter of intent to enact an MBTA zone in town. That's, to me, that's what that is.
Jeff, if you remember when this came up before our board a couple of years ago, when we were told that we had to submit this first document, I remember clearly, I think our town council gave us guidance on it as well, was submitting this did not require us as a town to do anything further. There's nothing in submitting this that says we have to do anything else. We can submit this and then say, that's it. We submitted this document, and then when the bell rings, you're now non-compliant. But by submitting this, it keeps us in compliance through the process until the bell rings.
July 14th. And then we're not going, yes.
So a vote, once
This
again,
is
to
what we
reiterate,
want.
is not required this evening, although as a show of support for the letter and submitting it with the action plan, it would be helpful to have a unanimous vote, and I don't mean to put you in that spot, Jeff, but it would be helpful. Is there an appetite to unanimously support this approach to submitting the action plan with the letter?
No.
Yes.
Well, it's not unanimous. I can tell you that.
I was speaking for myself.
Right, I know that.
The way I want to see it and the way I want to see it done, I think it's smarter to do it within the timeline. I know it's not what they're looking for, but it's what we want to say. And that we give it to them within the timeline. I don't know what it buys us. Probably doesn't, I don't think it buys us anything. Honestly, I think even if they did pull us out of this, having been here so long and watching the jail get built, we're not getting any more grants anyway. That's just how they are. So I don't want to use the damage done, but that's done. And this is just a way to, in my mind, it's just a way to already have something in a file somewhere if and when legal stuff happens, you know?
I agree. I think it looks favorably upon us if we do it.
I really don't, I think if it's not unanimous, it loses the value, so that's fine. And I'm not trying to put you in a spot, Jeff, just factually. So I'm gonna go ahead and move forward, the way described, and I don't think there's anything else on this topic at this time.
No.
Anything else?
We've beat this horse.
Sure. Motion adjourned?
So move.
Thank you. Good idea. Thank you, everyone.